BLOCKTV. It's time now for Chain Breakers. With volatility in crypto markets ruling the second half of 2019, where a single 24 hours can see Bitcoin shift by over 40%, it seems now more than ever MakerDAO's mission to provide a stable hedge for those in the crypto sphere using smart contract technology is more relevant than ever. And I speak now with Mariano Conti, Head of Smart Contracts at the Maker Foundation. Mariano, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so now the big announcement coming from the Maker Foundation of late, we've got the announcement of the multi-collateral DAI scheduled for launch November 18th. Can you talk us through what the multi-collateral DAI is, what it will offer, and how it's going to change the face of Maker into the future?
Yes, of course. So for the past 2 years, the token known as DAI, the one that has been in use for the last 2 years, it is only backed by Ether. The idea behind multi-collateral DAI is there are going to be several assets that will that you can use to generate DAI in addition to Ether. We are launching with just two, Ether and BAT, but eventually that's going to pave the way for several other assets being able to be used in the system. But that is only one part of multi-collateral. There are many improvements done to the system, too many to mention in a couple of minutes, but it's a reimagining and a much better version.
Right, and I mean, of course, the whole DAI model is still very young, in its infancy, you could say. In terms of how you envisage this next stage, the multi-collateral DAI development, do you see this as a sort of final form, as it were, or is this just the next stage in a longer process in terms of development of the sort of DAI community and the underlying technology?
I would say it's certainly as close to the original vision as we've made it. Of course, there are smart contracts that can be put in and taken out and upgraded, but this is as close to the vision as we have right now. The idea now is to increase the total supply and make it a couple of orders of magnitude larger. Right now, DAI is capped at 100 million, so there cannot be any more than that. And with multi-collateral DAI, we expect that number to grow a lot more.
Right, and as well, you know, with the development of this new technology, you guys there at the Maker Foundation are changing, announced you're changing a whole slew of elements of DAI itself, including the branding, how the platform works, the user experience, etc. Can you talk us a little bit through how some of those changes are going to impact users and what it's going to, sort of the new direction is going to be?
Yes, a lot of the changes are just nomenclature. So we're renaming CDPs to vaults. The current token is going to be named Psi, and the new one is going to be called DAI. Other than that, we have a clear roadmap for migration for users that currently have DAI or CDPs in the system to be able to convert them to DAI and to Maker vaults. The process is going to be up the moment the system is deployed. And for a user that already has DAI or has interacted before, it shouldn't present any new challenges. We expect to make it just a couple of clicks and you will be interacting with the new system.
So as well as addressing the elements of the new system, I want to address parts of the system that exist right now. Now, Mariano, there was a recent I don't know if controversy is the right word, but interesting development within the DAI governance model in which the stability fee was dropped down to 5.5%, moved in large part, ostensibly by a whale who in the voting platform, and for those who don't know, you know, with DAI's governance model, it's all conducted via voting on the platform by users and holders of DAI that voted with a weight of 94.07%. Of that particular, that particular vote, seemingly an outsized sort of voting, a re-centralizing, as it were, of what is supposed to be, I suppose, a decentralized model. Without getting too much into the technical elements, but just talking about the sort of governance structure and what you feel about that, do you think this has had a negative impact on the sort of view of DAI as a whole, or is this the system functioning as you would hope it to?
I would say the system is functioning as it is. The problem is that not enough people vote. This is true that there was a single address that voted with a lot of MKR, thus pushing the vote in their favor. But this was a vote that had, if I'm correct, around 5% participation of the whole MKR universe. So how do we fix this? We fix this by having more people vote. One of the problems is we have governance votes every week. And now with multi-collateral DAI, we could even have multiple votes per week. And a lot of people just do not have the time or the knowledge to participate in so many votes. So one of the things that I am pushing, not even as a member of the foundation, but just as an individual, I'm pushing for MKR holders to organize and maybe do vote delegation to people from the community that do participate in all of the calls, and they know about the system and they keep themselves informed. And so they can create even like larger groups of MKR holders just by pooling their tokens together. And because of the beauty of smart contracts, all of this can be done in a safe and non-custodial way, meaning you could elect somebody as your MKR representative, to call it something, with one transaction, but you could remove that power with just another transaction. So no need for extensive, like politician careers. It's like you can delegate power with as simple as a MetaMask click.
I mean, that's a fascinating concept you've just addressed right there. Moving the sort of the make-or-die model from a direct democracy to a representative democracy, all within the governance of a cryptocurrency. I mean, that's a fascinating development. Is that the sort of network developments and governance developments that you think are the future of the make-or-die model?
I can say if they're the future, but I do know that there are people already that are thinking about this, and the past vote just made it more clear that, for example, the last vote, yeah, it passed because one whale voted, but there have been cases of votes that with just a couple of people voting one way or the other, they could have swayed the vote. So when they say, hey, I only have a tiny amount, my vote doesn't matter, if you just organize with a couple more people, then it could. And that's true in on-chain governance as in life, right? People think their vote doesn't matter, but if they do come and they show up and they vote, then it turns out that it does.
Yeah, certainly a valuable lesson perhaps that could be put forward in a lot of democracies around the world at the moment. But avoiding that larger subject for a moment, I want to turn from the technical elements of the system to the practical elements of life and where the rubber meets the road, because Mariano, you yourself live in Argentina, a country currently undergoing some pretty extreme financial turmoil at the moment. The peso there suffering some pretty staggering declines, rampant inflation. But you as well sort of proudly state, as you spoke about at DevCon recently, that you live your life almost exclusively utilizing your cryptocurrency. Can you talk us through what it's like to live like that in a country like Argentina that's facing such difficult financial times?
Yes, that is correct. So I started getting paid in Bitcoin around 2014, and then in Ether in 2015. And I joined the Maker Foundation in 2016. And the moment we released the first version of DAI, my next paycheck came in DAI 100%. And it's been that way up to this day. And it's going to continue to be that way for the foreseeable future. And the main benefit for me is that I can somewhat extract myself out of this system where my talk at DevCon said, it was called How I Survived Argentina's 50% Inflation. And I said that careful because the year isn't over. It seems that the year is going to end with around 60 or 65% inflation. And we're not yet at the point where I can go with my smartphone and buy everything with my cryptocurrency. But what I can do is get paid in that. And then once or twice a month, I can off ramp into pesos and pay my bills, pay my rent, that kind of thing. And the beauty, in my opinion, of DAI is that when I used to get paid in Bitcoin or in Ether, the volatility is such that, yeah, everybody remembers who became a millionaire because they got paid a few BTC in 2012, 2013. But those are the lucky ones. A lot of people, they got paid in those, maybe in Bitcoin or in Ether, and the next day the price can drop 20%. And in a country where minimum wage is probably around $500, if you lose 100 of those, then it's pretty bad for everybody. DAI protects you against that volatility.
And certainly it's a form of protection in a volatile market. But do you think, Mariano, that it can be useful in context, say, outside of Argentina, like outside of countries that are facing those large economic crises and serious fiscal issues? Do you think that DAI can be a useful tool in countries with a more stable fiat, or is it just not there yet? Is the technology still developing?
I would say that, for example, for us, it was out of necessity that we had to find things like cryptocurrencies to protect us from the system. There's other places that just the economy is not bad, and there's no real need in that sense to find something different. But for example, with the case of DAI, there are pretty attractive interest rates if you loan DAI either in platforms like Compound or DYDX, or in Maker, in multi-collateral DAI, we're going to come out with the DAI savings rate, which is essentially a smart contract where you lock up your tokens and they start accruing value just by being in there, and that comes out of the vault owners that created the DAI. When they have to pay that back, some of that goes to the DAI holders. So you're looking at right now around, I believe Compound is paying around 7-8% APR. We don't know exactly what that's going to be, but it could be just a better bank account. And that's how a lot of projects are catering to people who maybe they say, hey, I have USD, that's enough for me.
So then returning just to Argentina there, do you think that looking forward into the future, do you think more Argentines will follow your model? Do you see an embracing of cryptocurrencies generally, of DAI specifically, in and around the sort of day-to-day life with the peso collapsing, with strict monetary controls being put in place? Are more and more people actually turning to cryptocurrencies, or is that just the dream that those inside the sphere have?
No. A lot of people are turning to cryptocurrencies. They did that in 2012, and we're doing this again in 2018, in 2019, 2020. I see more and more people, and people who are not maybe crypto savvy yet, but they've been hearing about it. Our Telegram groups, they doubled in size in the past couple of weeks because of the really bad economic situation here, and it's starting to escape the crypto bubble. That's one of the best things. We have people from the Maker Foundation here in Argentina working towards increasing adoption, creating point of sale systems. We are pushing the Ethereum Foundation to host the next edition of DevCon in Buenos Aires with the hashtag DevConBA 2020. Because we want people to see that Argentinians have always tried to escape this kind of economic situations before with any tools imaginable. And now I believe we have the best tool to do this, which is DAI and Ethereum.
All right, well, it's going to be fascinating to see how that does develop, if this really is the sort of use case point for cryptocurrencies as a whole, for DAI specifically. We're fascinated to see how that develops, and we'll be sure to be watching closely here at BLOCKTV. But in the meantime, Mariano Conti, Head of Smart Contracts at the Maker Foundation, I want to thank you so much for coming on to speak with us, talking about the multi-collateralized DAI development and how things are playing out in the real world there in Argentina. Thanks so much for joining us, and stay with us at blocktv.com for all the latest in news and information. I'm Asher Westrop Evans. Thanks for watching.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.